Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to an AF chat. This is the second AF chat we're doing live on YouTube, which is really fun. And this is also the second AF chat that we're doing that's specifically dedicated to subscriptions. I've done a bunch of App Store optimization related stuff over the last few months, and people really, really love that. I get a ton of questions about that, and I will continue to do those. Now we moved into one at the beginning of the month and one at the end of the month. So we're going to do more of those. But subscriptions is a topic that I care about a lot because that's how a lot of apps and more games, which is not surprising, are starting to really make money. And I'm not talking about kind of making money. I'm talking about really making money. And it doesn't require being a big company or a Tinder or anything like that to leverage subscriptions to have a really good business. And I invited Jake to tell us some more about that because Jake is one of those people who started out something really from scratch. And I have met Jake, 4 maybe years ago, something along those lines, and really seen how his empire really got built from the ground up. And there's actually a really funny story to how we met. I don't know if you remember, we were at a conference and we were at a workshop. I was not presenting at that time. We were both sitting in the audience, and it was a workshop about landing pages for websites.
Yeah, I
And
remember that.
someone said something, and I talked about a tool that I use for website A/B testing, Google Optimize back then. And Jake was sitting, I think, in front of me. Immediately tried it out, without even knowing who I was. I was just like randomly talking into the ether, and I see it on his computer from behind. I was like, this kid is gonna go far. This guy's going
I
places.
recommended that countless times since then.
It's such a good tool. I mean, anything that allows you to gain visibility, A/B testing is a good tool. We'll talk about A/B testing in a little bit too. But that's how it all started. And then Jay came to some of our events physically in the office. That's what we're talking about before when you couldn't hear Jake. And it was just a blast. So I'm really happy to have you here, Jake. I'm not going to tell your story. That's a you thing. But Jake is a really talented both developer. He really understands the game of subscriptions and really understands what it means to go from a download, which is where I usually talk about how to get to a download, and turn that download into a paying subscriber, which is really the goal for everyone. So welcome, Jake. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having me.
suffering through this microphone ordeal. And can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you started, why you're here, and we'll talk about subscriptions.
For sure, for sure. So I started iOS development in high school. I built myself a little fitness app that let me. It was hard coded with just my routine, and I would log in every day, and I would basically just have a reference list for what to do at the gym. In college, Swift came out, made programming a lot more approachable than it was in high school. I built upon that first app, created an app called LiftLog, and that let other people input their own routines and track their own workouts. After around 3 years, LiftLog had collected so much data that I had this idea where I would take all that data and create an algorithmic approach to weightlifting, where the app would provide you with a workout routine that you can follow and automatically adjust its sets, reps, and weights based on your workout history and based on other people's workout history. So I bootstrapped that app. That was called Fitness AI. I bootstrapped it to $1 million in recurring revenue in a little over a year. Not without my friends, specifically Zachary Shaked and Gennady Ukraine. That's what I love about this community. You know, people just share things, and they basically taught me that you could spend money on Facebook ads and turn those users into subscribers, and turn that into a process that you can iterate on, and grew it up quite substantially. After a while, I pretty much drank the A/B testing Kool-Aid a little more than I should have, I think. And I would focus way too much on optimizing my onboarding and optimizing my paywall. And it took me around 3 years to realize that I started the wrong business. And at around the same time, I became very close with Superwall's co-founders, Justin Hilliard and Brian Anglin. And we decided to both ditch our previous startups and to build an A/B testing platform for developers with respect to paywalls.
What a story. I mean, this talks to me directly because I also started out making things and realized that there was this big need for tools for other people who make things. And I mean, the rest is history. So
Yep.
it's such an interesting path to be on. But that's also, I think, like the pain, what it means to have a paywall or a paywall, yeah, that doesn't convert. So one of the things that we can talk about for days, but just to kind of kickstart this is I always talk about how to get downloads. I talk about getting downloads because that's the most important thing at the top of the beginning of the journey of making money. And when it comes to subscriptions, that's just the beginning, right? So from what I've seen, the developers I talk to, everyone that I talk to, a lot of people don't really realize that getting people to pay you is about more than just making great features, right? And you know this firsthand. You make great features, but people may not get to that point because there's a wall in between, a paywall. So
Yeah. So I think that people's products fall into two groups. One is your product is fantastic, it retains well. Those products are afforded the ability to give away their services for free and say, okay, people will subscribe later on. The thing is, it takes a long time to get there, and you're not going to continue iterating unless you show the paywall really early and get people to subscribe without trying your product. That's kind of where I sit.
yeah, and I think that makes a ton of sense. You can easily just say the whole thing is free. Go to town. I'll learn from you, but then you make no money. But then you think, well, if I give it to them, eventually when I just ask for a little bit in subscription, they'll definitely pay me, right? And the answer is no. Any change from free to paid, you need to think about because that's really a change, and that's where paywalls come into play. And I've seen a lot more attention to paywalls on my Twitter feed over the last few months, and I think it makes sense with reason, right? So, how where would you say you started realizing that paywall was kind of a stopping point for people, and then started those A/B tests and really obsessing over those?
So when Fitness AI first launched, we monetized with an $8 a month product. You got 3 free workouts. This was remotely configurable, so I can give you one free workout up to 7 is what I tested. And so I started with 3 free workouts because that's what our competition was doing. After your free workouts were complete, you got a 7-day free trial. After that, you'd start paying $8 a month. And I launched that for a month. Obviously, no one subscribed. I was like, what's going on? And so I eventually arrived at the metric. What percentage of the people even saw the paywall? It was like 8%.
Oh, wow.
So meanwhile, other apps, 8% are converting. In my app, 8% was seeing the paywall. And so I realized something had to change. So in the spirit of building testable experiments, I didn't want to just turn it on for everyone. So I made it one of the earliest, best decisions I made was making everything remotely configurable.
Mm-hmm.
So I could choose where the paywall pops up. I could choose what the text in the paywall is. I could choose what the primary product is. And that led to rapid iteration, which in the course of 2 weeks, I ran a bunch of experiments and got it up to at least 5-6% install to paid, install to trial. Yep.
Talk about a difference.
Oh yeah. And then over the course of a year, increased it to around 8% install to trial. And then right when Superwall came out, I tested a paywall before onboarding, which I never tested before. And I added a video. And install to trial went up to 15%.
Wow.
And that's really when I realized the power of you need to be able to change and move the paywall anywhere. Because if there's any sort of cost associated with running a test, the chances that you'll find a winner is greatly minimized.
Absolutely. And I think that's the lesson we learned with Google Optimize back all those years, that it has to be super simple. And it's very difficult to make these things super simple, which is something Superwall does for you, which we'll get to later on. But 2 things that I wanted to bring up are, one, we're going to talk about actual ways, like actual things that Jake did to really get the ball rolling, and also more advanced stuff that you can go and you should do, and you should definitely do. And if you don't have a way to test them, we'll talk about how you can do that too. But the other is the chat is for questions. So if you have a question for me, for Jake, about anything that's relevant, please put it in the chat. I'll try to bring those on screen if they fit into what we're saying. If not, we'll try to get to them at the end. So ask away, and even if we don't get to them, we can later on turn them into comments and respond to them even after the live stream. So if you have a question, make sure we see it, and we'll do our best to answer it. But back to our scheduled programming. So a lot of what when I think about ideas to improve things, I think about like the randomest ideas. And sometimes it's little, like changing some text, and sometimes it's crazy, like moving things to the top instead of the bottom, or like you were saying, moving when you ask to like right up front as opposed to later on, which would make sense in most cases. How did you go about, one, about coming up with these ideas, and two, about saying what should I do first?
Your ability to iterate is like linearly correlated with how good your analytics are set up. So when someone isn't converting, I literally have to write out all the steps. What does someone need to do to get from point A to conversion? And then you create funnels in in Mixpanel or in whatever analytics provider you use, and you see which steps have the highest drop-off rate. You try removing them. You can swap the order out. So like a specific good trick for onboarding, if you have like 15 steps for your onboarding and you're trying to optimize for completion, just sort the onboarding steps by each step's conversion rate. So put the highest converting steps up front, lowest converting steps at the end, and analyze it. So yeah, I would say just being very systematic about what does a user need to do to get from point A to point B, and then analyzing the hell out of that.
I think that's such a good starting point, because a lot of times when I talk to people, they really forget about this whole journey. The user has to get from point A to point B, and some parts go missing. And I think that's sometimes why we see paywalls that, in my opinion, kind of miss the point. They forget that the user needs to, travel, go through this journey. It's not just a Boolean, free or paid. What are some of the things that you have done that were definitely mistakes and no one should do, or things that you've seen others do now that you're at Superwall?
Being shady with your pricing. Like it's sort of like a U curve. The shadier you are, the more people will convert. If you sort of are like trying to hide behind the pricing, you're basically being as shady as you can be that would get through app review. That's like the worst you'll ever do in terms of conversions. But if you're very explicit and upfront and transparent, we actually see very similar trial start rates as to the really shady apps.
Interesting.
So an example would be, instead of saying, you know how people are shady. I mean, I don't know. Instead of like saying like tap to continue and then it opens the IAP sheet.
Yep.
Instead of doing that, you would say 7 days free, then $99.99 a year. Right? Tap to continue.
Yeah.
Explicitly tell them to continue. Explicitly tell them how much they're going to get. Make sure they know it's free.
Yeah.
Like most people, it's free. Like, why not start a trial?
Mm-hmm.
Tell them that they can cancel. Tell them it's free.
Yeah.
If you communicate this well and there's enough intent's highest when they just download the app. So if you tell them that this is free right when they download it, the chances that they'll try it are much higher. And show them how to cancel.
That makes a ton of sense. I mean, up until now, I think most people don't know that you can easily cancel a subscription, and you can start a subscription and cancel, and you're still going to get the 7 days or however many days, which is what I think happens to HBO Max all the time. But with all the changes in iOS 15, that now apps will make it even easier and in-app be able to cancel, that also gives you that sort of flexibility, quote unquote, between going shady and maybe hiding that or putting that up front. And in my experience, the easier you make it to leave your app alone, the better it is, because the people who are paying you and don't need to be paying you, that like shady model, you don't want those. Those that never help in any way. How do you see the additions of those playing into really how you convert? Do you think that will have an immediate impact, or is that something that's just going to be in the background?
I think it'll have an immediate impact. I think paywalls will begin including exactly how to cancel. Like, I think a paywall should say, pro tip, start your free trial, go to settings and cancel if you don't like it. You still have access for 7 days. At least you're getting people through the door.
Yeah.
It's one step closer.
That's such a good point. You want to get people through the door because you reduce the friction. I say friction all the time, but this is really what it is. You reduce the friction, and that's what A/B testing aims to do, to help you find that point, moving them around all these experiments to reduce the friction so someone knows that they can sign up and they can cancel. They can do whatever really they want, which makes a lot of sense.
One of the easiest, well, I think most impactful things people can do, if someone bounces off your paywall, so if they don't convert, hit them with a survey asking them why. This is how Blinkist arrived at that free trial timeline. The number one reason people didn't subscribe is because they didn't know when they'd be billed.
Interesting.
So it's a simple thing you can do. If people said they don't know how to cancel, add a graphic showing people how to cancel in the paywall.
Super easy. It just makes sense. That's a good thing about doing these sort of like thinking that way. If you and have you done surveys like this in Fitness AI?
No, not for the why haven't you subscribed.
Okay.
We've done why do you cancel surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done like standard product market fit type surveys.
What is normally the response rate on things like that? The why do you cancel more specifically? Because that's also tied right into that.
I would say 2% of subscribers have filled out like a 15-question survey.
Not bad.
You only do it to retained users. So you do it to, well, there's two types. You want to figure out what should you double down on? What are you not doing that you need to start doing? So to figure out what you should double down on, you ask your most passionate user. To figure out what you're not doing, you ask people who bounced off your paywall.
Okay. Another tip. I should start counting these tips because they are so good. But that makes a ton of sense. Someone who comes into your paywall doesn't necessarily know, maybe doesn't even know what they're looking for as much. And that's something that took me a long time to learn. Not everyone who ends up on your paywall knows what they want. So your paywall can't just say, if you know you want X, here's X. Your paywall really has to be a marketing page at the end of the day for what X is. And you see this done very well with dating apps who are trying to remind you how much you really want those features and not just say, you get this. I mean, apps that did do that over the years have become very irrelevant. Something like OkCupid didn't do a good job with its paywall, and something like Hinge and Tinder did a much better job, and look at them now. So that's a very interesting one. Now, we talked about like making all these changes and looking at the paywall as one big experiment that you can move around or you can modify. If you didn't have Superwall, how would you do that?
Remote config.
Okay.
From Firebase. Either that, or we didn't use remote config at Fitness AI. I just had like a config.json that I would host on a CDN, and it would pull that, and that's it.
So you have to build it basically.
Works. Yeah.
You have to make your own. Well, I guess that makes sense for Superwall. And how would you do that with Superwall? How do you make that so much more convenient that everyone has to install that right now and not think twice?
For sure. So when you integrate Superwall, we abstract everything about the paywall away from the developer. So all you really call is paywall.present. Based on settings that you configure from our dashboard, whenever that user triggers a presentation, we figure out what paywall they should see and we show the right one. So you can make rules based off user properties. You can even retroactively decide, I want to show a paywall whenever this analytics event gets called. So that's how you can move your paywall before onboarding or after onboarding.
Interesting. And in your experience, moving it before onboarding, what does that mean, moving it before onboarding, just so we know? But then how does that help or change the dynamics?
There are two ways to move it before onboarding. First is to literally make it the welcome screen. So the second you download the app, you're hit with a paywall. You're saying, listen, this is a premium app. It's free for 7 days. Here's what you get. So people are pretty, like, that's when intent is highest. So what the benefits of that is capturing that intent. The issue is obviously a lot of people will bounce.
Yeah.
But it's a fine line. And of course, this is a skippable paywall. If people are bouncing, make the skip button more clear if that's what you're worried about. The second option is still have a welcome screen, or like a getting started or a carousel. This is what this app is about. And when you click sign up, it opens the paywall. We've seen it better that you still have the welcome screen, but when you click sign up, it opens right to the paywall. That's usually the winning setup that we've seen.
Interesting. I've seen that happen with more and more apps, or it's happening with more and more apps that they guide you through. This is a premium type of app. It costs money. You get this for free, but you have to kind of kick this off. So I think that will longer term become a real thing. I wonder if Apple or maybe even Google will do something to make that a little bit more, add a new tier. I know people have been talking about premium apps for a long time. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But if it does, that just goes to show that this is the way to do it. And because everything is experimental, that's really worth an experiment for your app. I know there was a tweet from Zach a long time ago, maybe a month or so ago, where he said, make your paywall the first thing people see. And I thought that was, on the one hand, a very dangerous tweet, but on the other, a very interesting tweet. It's interesting in the sense that just what you were saying, that could get people to convert, but that could also get them to drop off. So if you just do that, you could be hurting your bottom line. But if you're thinking about it as an experiment and you have some sort of infrastructure to support getting the learnings from that, that's really where it's at. So it's definitely worth an experiment. But it also leads me to another question. Is the pricing in your paywall, is that a huge element in the user deciding whether to cross the paywall or not? And I'm not talking if your prices are like incredibly unreasonably high, but I'm saying if if you test prices, does conversion change significantly on small changes, or is it really about how you structure the page and how the messaging is and when you show it?
It's a part of it. Generally, we see design, pricing, your messaging, the location of where your paywall is, and how often you give discounts, each one providing around a 20 to 25% lift.
Okay.
When fully optimized.
And is that a cascading sort of list, meaning you try this first, this second, this third, or any that you try is going to give you a nice lift when you optimize it?
If you haven't optimized it, you'll probably go up by 20% when you do. So if you just say, okay, we're an app that's going to be, let's say you want to do annual pricing, you decide on $60 a year. If you realize after 2 years you've never tested that, you might find a price that's pretty close that'll get you 20% more money. There is a chance that you're drastically undercharging. So maybe you go from 60 a year and you test 199 a year, and you actually realize that you could double your money that way. Because it's very hard to conceptualize how big the demand is for your most in-demand users. Basically, there's a chance there's a small portion of the population who are just dying for this thing and are willing to pay any amount for it.
Yeah.
And so you need to capture some of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There is a question that I see in the chat about an accepted ratio. Let me bring it up on screen. Is there an industry accepted ratio for what's a good install to free trial to paid trial? What would you say to that?
I'd say a gold standard is like 40 to 50%. We've seen 60%.
Oh wow! So that's free to trial or trial to paid?
Trial to paid.
Oh wow, that is a very high bar to aim for, I think.
Install to trial, we've seen 20%.
Interesting. So it's easier to get someone who trials your app to pay for it, from what you've seen, than it is to get someone who's very new to the app. That's worth a lot of experimenting then. And that's why the paywall is so important. You need to get the paywall is really the getting started wall when you think about it, because it kickstarts a trial if you have a trial, and I don't know many who don't at this point. So that's a really good question.
When your paywall is the first thing you see, you kind of have to include a trial.
Yeah.
They haven't seen your app yet. But usually the pricing that works and the trial period that works is more correlated to the problem you're solving. Because when the user is downloading the app, they think that your app solves the problem entirely. Right? They think it's a solution. So the solution is almost a commodity. The pricing is more dependent on how big the problem is. Um, so yeah, like calm bedtime stories. Putting your kid to bed is worth $300 a year or $400 for a lifetime, you know?
Yeah.
If someone builds a better version of calm and they show a paywall as the first thing the user sees, they won't be able to charge more because the user hasn't even tried their app.
Yeah. The perception. It's all about what
Right.
exists.
How good your app is, that's correlated to your trial conversion rate.
So you can't scare them off with your pricing early on, and you shouldn't be shady, so you should definitely show it.
Definitely show it. Yeah, yeah.
But
just be very upfront that this is free.
Yeah.
It's expensive because it works, and this problem is really annoying.
Yeah.
But at least it's free for 7 days. No strings attached.
That makes a ton of sense. There is another question that I think has a bunch of other answers already in the chat. But the question is, considering subscription app educational game for kids, how would you handle paywall offers positioning in the user funnel? That's an interesting one.
So the buyer's the parents.
Exactly.
Again, the intent's highest when the parent is downloading the app. So I would be very specific, speak directly to parents, say, do you want quiet kids? Do you want happy kids? Do you want to, and sell the emotion of what the parent would be feeling if their kid had these things, right? So you could be relaxed, you know, you can cook without going crazy. You could work without going crazy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you looked at bringing up the paywall multiple times in a sequence, but somewhat rapidly? So not wait a long time, but just up, another click, up, another tap, up, another tap, up.
Yeah, when with apps that have a paywall before onboarding and after onboarding, the paywall after onboarding usually gets 20% of subscribers.
Oh,
so
wow.
You see a 25% relative lift when you add that paywall again after onboarding.
So when you ask, then show, then ask. Interesting.
Well, you do, yeah, paywall, onboarding, paywall.
Yeah.
And then paywall on every app open. And the paywall is always dismissible.
Yeah.
You can always just
easily
exit
dismissible,
out.
Hopefully.
Easily, yeah.
Interesting. I'm really curious do you have any numbers on easily dismissible versus not easily dismissible? Have you done any sort of?
Well, there are 3 things you can do. Well, 4. One is remove the exit button altogether.
But that's not allowed by app review.
Lock out your app. Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
I don't think it is. I could be wrong on this. Correct me in the chat if I am.
Okay, there's that one. The second is an X icon that appears after 10 seconds. It's like a dark pattern, or you can scroll all the way down. The exit button's actually on the bottom. That's okay. You'll probably get some subscribers, but you might pay for it in trial cancellations. Something that Fitness AI does, I don't have an X icon. I write out exit and I put it on the top left, and the top right is help. So when you're looking to exit, you're looking at the top right, and you can see that you can ask us a question. So maybe that'll get people to ask a question before just hard bouncing.
And does
then in the top left, it writes out exit. I don't know if it actually has an impact.
Interesting.
I don't know.
And does that help button? What does that do? Does that trigger like a live chat or an email or
intercom? Yeah, live chat.
Okay, so something they can get a question immediately, get bounced off to a KB or something like that.
Absolutely. How many times do you go to the store and before you buy something, you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Or you read reviews, you know? You got to bring that to your app. It's not easy, but you got to do it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Do you like intercom in your app? That's a side question.
It's expensive as shit, but I love it. Yeah, it's really expensive.
We looked at it once or twice before, but there are other much less expensive alternatives that are almost as good, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the best combination is customer.io with Twilio and SendGrid. So you could send texts, you could send emails.
You know, that actually brings up an interesting question. There was a question that I saw in the chat. Let me find it quickly. About how do you reach users who bounce off the paywall?
So there are a few ways. So that's also one of the downsides of putting the paywall before onboarding. You can't contact them.
Yeah.
What a lot of people do, which works great, ask for notification permission, literally on the paywall. So paywall comes up, you're asking for notifications. They don't realize what's below it. But yeah, we've seen like, again, 20-25% of revenue come from notifications that you send out after someone bounces off the paywall. So do whatever you can to get an email, get push notification access.
So really find a way to find the user, get an email and hit them, get them to log in with Facebook or whatever, push
Exactly.
notifications, really any way you could. These all get really tricky, fairly tricky, I would say, because you're trying to do all these things that really help the app, but may make the user experience a little bit more cumbersome. How have you seen this? Like, have you seen something that's really amazing that kind of checks all the boxes and does not annoy the user? Or how would you go about building something like that if you wanted to accomplish everything? I'm just
Well,
curious
I
now.
wouldn't just ask notifications just for marketing.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure your app like does something,
Yeah.
but explain to the user, like, listen, this is a workout app. You want to work out more, give us notification access so we could, help you get to the gym. If you really have a, if you hold yourself to a strict moral standard, then make them opt into marketing emails and notifications, which is fine. Now that Apple lets you reach out to customers outside of your app to send them discounts, theoretically, if the user taps the X on your paywall, you can say, hey, do you want a discount?
True.
Enter your phone number.
Yeah.
And you can just send them right to Stripe. Like, that's totally legal now.
That's actually a really good point. Again, it goes back to any sort of way you can do to get people to cross that wall is really a positive, which I completely agree with in my experience. There's a question in the chat that's a little bit different. It has to do with App Store optimization. Niels is asking me specifically, being too harsh with your paywall resulting in high uninstall rate, how does it affect ranking performance? And in that sense, we're talking App Store optimization, organic ranks in results. Have you looked at any of that, or is that something that you do separately?
Yeah, the number one thing people say when I say, have you tried doubling your price? Have you tried removing the trial? Have you tried going full pay to play? So no freemium features. They say, my ranking's going to tank or my ratings will tank.
Yeah.
I haven't found that to be the case at all.
Interesting. It does kind of make sense because so if ratings tank, that's one thing, and we know ratings are really important to App Store optimization. On the Apple side of things, uninstalls, I'm pretty sure, don't really ruin your chances at ranking organically. We had a live stream a few months ago where someone said that they definitely do. I've not been able to really see that in the wild in any way since. So it might have been kind of an isolated incident or something else was going on. But I know that on the Google side of things, uninstalls definitely hurt your rank. So if someone installs your app, uninstalls your app immediately, it's not good. It's a negative metric, and they penalize you by dropping you in ranks. Google does a whole bunch of stuff with the onboarding. They care a lot about the beginning. So if people are downloading and leaving, they're not going to like you. But here's the thing. That's something that you can optimize, like we were saying before. So even if you put that up front, you can still do it in a way that will allow them to not allow them, but prevent them from uninstalling the app by making that exit button a lot more clear or making the getting started portion of it a little bit more obvious. So you have ways around this. It doesn't really have an immediate impact, but it could have an immediate impact. Again, test everything. I think that should be the key. If there's one thing you take from this, test everything. So hopefully that was a good answer. There's another question in the chat that I thought was interesting, but Leonardo is asking, how different would you handle paywall offers for a user that installed your app through your inbound channel, blog, landing page, etc.? Is that something you would even differentiate?
Yeah, intent is much higher when they come organically.
Makes sense.
If attribution was working, I would test that with a higher price if they came organic. Attribution doesn't really work now, so I think it's a futile effort.
That's it's a good point. The more I think about it, the more I realize. Would you change anything in the page itself other than the price? If you had the ability to attribute these?
Totally.
What kind of changes would you make?
If you're a fitness app and you're advertising weight loss, then the paywall should show the weight loss benefits to using fitness AI. If it was gain muscle, that should be the focus.
That makes sense. We had in the previous live stream where we talked about App Store optimization, one point was brought up that a fitness app is not really selling workouts. If you think about it, it's selling a trimmer midsection, it's selling weight loss, it's selling looking better, feeling better, it's selling all these other things. So it does make a lot of sense to customize the landing page for that intent. Landing page being the paywall at this point, because it's the first thing we're saying people could see, or maybe not the first thing, but fairly early on. So that makes sense. Hopefully that was the answer you were looking for, Leonardo. But that's also what I would say. And I know that when we do this, it works very, very well, and it's pretty useful. So definitely worth the effort. But attribution is a problem. There's not much we can do about that. So you did bring up pricing, which gives me a pretty good way to ask this. Do you think that anchoring your pricing, meaning having a slightly more expensive plan that you're not really expecting people to take, but you want all the other plans to look a little bit cheaper, do you think that's useful inside of a paywall, or do you think that just clutters it up too much?
I don't know. In the test that we've run, the bulk of which are with apps that are generating 50 to 100K a month in revenue. Those almost always benefit from having one product, one clear CTA.
Okay.
At the same time, you have to assume comms paywall is optimized like crazy. And if they're giving you options, then I'm sure there's there's a winning. We've definitely not seen I feel comfortable steering you away from trying to figure out a weekly product that works, a monthly product that works, an annual product that all have similar LTV, and letting the user choose. That's just kind of a paradox of choice. Come up with one product. If you're saying you want to say, okay, lifetime is $1,000 or subscribe annually for $50 a year, it makes you think, wow, the annual seems like a great deal. Who would ever get lifetime?
Yeah.
We haven't run experiments like that.
Okay. That's my problem with lifetime is maybe interesting now, maybe helps promote the other in-app purchase, depending on what the price difference is. But from everything I've seen, it's just terrible for long-term just being able to exist in the space as a company. You sell lifetime, and for now you see, oh, money in the bank. Yes. But those people are not going to ever pay you again. And even if you stop the lifetime, they're still not ever going to pay you again. So
right. It's helpful if you're spending a lot on acquisition and you find that some small portion will triple your LTV.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, people they mess up the calculation. So when you're looking at LTV for an annual product, let's say your average LTV is $80.
Mm-hmm.
That's your average LTV.
Yep.
There are tons of people who will have an LTV of $200 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people who are likely going to do lifetime.
Do you think
your average LTV will probably fall for your annual product when you offer the lifetime?
That makes a ton of sense. And for those of you who do not know what LTV is, I'm sure there are none of you here, but if you don't, it's the lifetime value of a single subscription. And you look at basically what's the most money you get from a single customer over time, and you average it across all the customers. And hopefully over time that continues to go up as people stick around and you have really good engagement and retention, and your churn is very low. So you want that to go up, but at the same time, once you kind of cannibalize the ones that are lifting that LTV up, you're in trouble, and that all is going to go down. There's a question from Jeff about lifetime, and I think lifetime subscription is a good question. So let me bring that in. And then there's another question from Peter I think would be nice to look at. So Jeff is asking, is lifetime good when converting from in-app purchase to a subscription? So if your app only had an in-app purchase and now it's moving towards a recurring in-app purchase, what would you say to that?
I'd say always grandfather old users in. Think about how you move forward from a blank slate, whatever's best for you so that you can continue to work on the product and build a better product for your users.
Yeah, that makes sense. In all of my pricing experiments my entire life, we've always grandfathered people in. So it's never a case of, I want to try something, so it's your fault.
Yep.
The one challenge with that is as you go through and change your prices drastically, you'll end up with users who are paying more than the new price you decided on. And what to do with those is always tricky.
Yeah.
but every app
Yeah,
is different.
that's again depends on your moral compass.
Moral compass, type of app, whether it's a lifetime versus a subscription. So if someone paid a ton for a lifetime and now your subscription is really inexpensive, it's you have to find the
Yeah,
right
it's a
balance.
fine
What do you
line.
do? So it's totally up to you as the developer of this, but it is something to keep in mind, I would say, thinking about it before you even head into this. And let me find the question from
So
Peter.
a rule that we do at Fitness AI is if we're running a price experiment, we've run experiments that had 10 SKUs in a month. Far less people than you think actually reach out saying, hey, my friend has a cheaper price. What's going on?
Yeah.
If they ever say that, just give them the cheaper price. There's no, like, they'd be happy. Just explain what you were doing. I was price testing.
Yep.
So we could generate more revenue because we're a business. We're happy to honor the cheaper price. And they think highly of you.
Yeah.
That you're a stand-up company.
And I can say this from experience. I've done exactly that over the years. I went from being super scared about testing any of our prices. We were the same price for like 7 years. And then one day I was like, let's just give it a try and see what happens. And people did ask, not many, but people did ask. And we say that exact same thing. We are a business. We do want to maximize how much money we make because ultimately we're putting that back into making a better product. Everyone was happy about that.
Yeah, everyone gets it.
Yeah. And I think in a way it even shows that you care about your product and we care about our platform so much. We have to make this work without compromising
anecdotally,
anything.
I was on that original $29.99 a month plan or whatever it was that you were charging. Since 2008, I was on that, or 2009. But the second you increased the pricing, I was like, all right, Ariel, let's see what you got. And Appfigures got like 10 times better in the last 3-4 years.
Yep.
And so like I was genuinely excited.
You see? That's awesome. That's great to hear. I did not pay him for this. I mean, technically, he paid me for this, so we're all happy. But yeah, that's really what it's all about. I mean, we as the people who set the pricing, we have such an incredible ability to really change the business. And if you don't experiment, you're leaving so much on the table. I put up a question on the screen from Peter, who was asking, any thoughts on converting a paid app with non-consumable in-app purchases to a free app with subscriptions? I know many people care about this, and I did some interviews in the past, which I should link to about this, and I'm going to do more on this on the show. But how do you see that transition happening?
So this is like an app that costs $2.99 that you now want to start charging $10 a year for, or something like that.
I would imagine that's the case. Peter, drop in the chat if that's the case, or drop your pricing. But it sounds like it. A paid app with non-consumable in-app purchases to a free app with subscriptions.
You got to just try it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like remove the price, grandfather everybody in. There's a hack to figure out when someone downloaded. You could look at when the documents directory was created. So that's just like a really simple way. Do you grandfather this person in? So if it's before a certain date, they get it for free. Afterwards, add Superwall. See how a paywall works.
How easy is it to add Superwall? I've never tried, so I'm asking legitimately.
It's like 10 lines.
Okay.
It's the same thing as adding mixed panel or Revenue Cat's probably a little bit trickier.
Oh yeah, that's a whole implementation.
There's really just like, there's a delegate. So you have to tell us, we tell you, okay, users trying to purchase this product. You can check out however you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a matter of tracking events and presenting the paywall. You just run paywall.present.
And how long would you say it would take someone who may have not done this before, may have not tinkered with any of this, to set up the paywall side from your platform?
So we build every new sign up a paywall for free.
Okay.
Totally custom paywall with their branding. We plan to do that for as long as we can.
Wait.
We have someone full-time who just builds paywalls.
Say that again. So you're actually doing all the setup for people who sign up now?
Yes, we're building them a free paywall with best practices that we get from our unique vantage point. Everyone gets a free paywall.
Wow.
And we'll continue to help you to iterate on it until we beat your native conversion rate. It's got to be a no-brainer. If you're selling more money, it needs to be more money,
Yeah.
So we want to make sure you get there.
That's amazing. That sort of excitement that makes you say, I'm going to do your work for you because I trust what I built. That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Yeah,
and I
awesome.
say that from like a founder perspective, more so than anything else. But And we didn't even coordinate this before. I'm legitimately excited by this right now.
We're at a, like, we don't even need to do that much critical thinking. We're from a position where we can see what's working in every app. So when we build you a paywall and we have 5 health and fitness apps to reference, it's a sure shot. It's a sure thing that will at least get close to outdoing your native performance.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, just a few experiments, and in my experience, a few experiments, and you can usually get better conversion. So you just have to try. But trying is so hard, but this makes trying so easy, so everything becomes better. I brought up another question on the screen, which I think some people are asking, but Leonard again is asking, should we display the paywall alongside the sign up login section? I have seen a lot of apps that ask for a login just before paywall, and that annoys the heck out of me. Is that really useful?
Well, you need to show login before the paywall because people need to be able to log in.
Yep.
If they're paying. I would make the sign up button lead to the paywall, but let them skip it. And
Back
if
to
you're
skipping.
concerned that if that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, I have 2 responses. One, you got to see how much money you'd make. You got to know as a business owner, you need to know what you're leaving on the table. Then you can make an informed decision on if the bad taste is worth it. And second, just keep making the exit button more obvious.
If we learned anything, the other takeaway after experiments is make the exit button huge, but don't be afraid to show your paywall. I'm really into that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it goes really back to, if you want to make changes, just be upfront about them. You're changing the price. We're trying to do better. We're just doing our best here. So that's kind of the same. Hans in the chat is saying, I converted my app from a paid app, and I am now making more than 10x from what I was selling the paid app. So,
nice.
Boy, oh boy, that sure is something. And one of the things that I think are also important, and I'll bring that up, it's a second chat from Hans. Hans is saying, I still give the original paid app buyers all the original features, but they must subscribe to get the new features, which is exactly what we did with Appfigures when we rolled out a whole bunch of plans 3-ish years ago. So everything you're used to, you're grandfathered into, you're keeping the same amount that you're paying, even if it's very little in comparison. You're getting all the features that you had before, nothing changes. But we have all these cool things, so if you want to give them a try, just give this a try. And in my experience, that definitely works. So having the ability to even display that with a paywall, meaning have the paywall say what I just said, I think would be incredible and would definitely improve conversion, which is something we tried to do on the platform. And we built everything from scratch, which was a lot of fun. And by that, I mean a lot of work. But it definitely had that sort of increase in conversion, which was amazing, especially when you roll out a whole bunch of new features and you change your pricing and you have no idea what's going to happen. It's kind of like slow roasting meat. You put it in the oven and 8 hours later, it might be amazing, or it might be unedible. You need to go order some Chinese food. So if you can get to a point where you have at least the tools to say, I'm going to do my best to optimize this, and you start seeing the returns immediately, means you did a good job, or you're starting to do a good job, and now you can convert more. So that makes a lot of sense. I think that's all the time
I don't know
we
if
have.
Superwall is the Chinese food or if it's a juicy, brisket in that example.
That's the tool you need in order to make sure that your brisket is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I think. So we're wrapping up. We started a little bit late, so we'll take maybe another question or two, and then we'll be done. But if you have any more questions, or if we didn't get to your questions, drop them in the comments, not in the chat, in the comments below. We'll take a look at these comments later on today when this video goes live, and make sure we try to answer them to the best of our abilities. And we're on YouTube, so I should definitely say this. If you like this live stream, give it a like, that thing below, and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm really bad at doing this whole YouTube spiel, so I'm trying to get better at it, even on my weekly videos that I have where I share app news. Yeah, it always feels awkward. Like, if you like this, why wouldn't you hit the like button? Maybe because you don't know that it exists and it makes me happy. I don't know.
No one's more awkward than the late night show hosts. Like the post show.
Where they take clips and then it's like a totally different clip. Yeah. It's always funny though. I find it hilarious when they do this. So let's see what else we have in the chat. One last question, maybe. Okay, here we go. A question, what's the optimal time to give a discount once the user skips the onboarding paywall?
We've seen as early as 1 to 3 hours work.
Ooh, okay.
The way that you figure it out, I'll give you a framework to figure this out instead of giving you a random number. You need to look at, you have to plot a histogram from install to conversion time. And you want to group it in buckets of like 30 minutes. And the second you see that 90% of your conversions happen within, let's say, the first day, that means that you should offer a discount after day one. If 90% of your conversions are coming in the first 3 hours, then you offer a discount at the third hour.
So you find the time like exciting, the excitement period. And you just like hit it towards the end. That is interesting. I did this many, many years ago. I put everything into buckets and I tried to analyze that. And I ended up doing the same thing, but I haven't looked at it in a long time. I'm going to go and do that today.
And then, yeah, you look at if from that discount you're sending out in the 9th hour does better than 10% of your revenue, then you know that it was worth it.
Yeah, makes sense. I should also mention, one, you should go and get started with Superwall. Apparently, it's super easy. So if you don't, you're missing out, especially if this guy is going to do all of your optimization. Take him up on his offer. But also, if you need any sort of analytics and you're not already using Appfigures, we have, I want to say, the best way to look at subscription analytics coming directly from Apple, directly from Google. So they're 100% true. They don't get merged with like activation windows or anything else that happens in app. They're 100% accurate. Revenue is 100% accurate. Paying subscribers, all those fun numbers are all in there. And we're always working on ways to make them as simple as possible, which is kind of one of the biggest problems that I've seen with subscription analytics. They're rarely easy to look at. If you know exactly what you're doing and you like Excel sheets, great. Apple will give you a ton of data. Google will not give you a ton of data. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to know how many people are paying me, what are they paying me, what is my churn rate, what is my MRR, what is my ARR, all those pieces of information that sometimes you don't even get from the store. Actually, you never get from the stores. You can get with us. We do all the math and calculation. So check us out. There's a link to us in the description as well, or there will be if there isn't one already. Yeah. A user since when, did you say? 2009?
2009, yeah, something like that.
That's incredible. That's the year we started. We celebrated 13 years not too long ago, last month. That's amazing. That I didn't even know. And I didn't even know Jake until like 3-4 years ago. So that's pretty cool. There was another quick question that I think would be nice to look at, and that is there kind of an industry standard for a subscription churn rate?
So I got this number from Bravo. Do you know Bravo?
I do know Bravo very well.
They say that they're like, if you're getting 40% year-over-year retention, you're in good standing.
Ooh.
They haven't seen more than 60% retention for companies that are doing a few million in revenue.
That kind of makes sense.
And they're always the outliers.
Yeah. Different apps, different industries, different types of needs. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. So I think that's going to be the last question we take today. Again, if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments below. When this video goes live as a video, hopefully we'll have answers. I'm going to go through and check that in a few hours. And this video should be up in a few hours too. So easy peasy. Jake, thank you so much for coming here. This was super insightful. I really enjoy this. We can continue this for days because I have so many questions and we can get so deep into this. So I might ask you to come back and we can do like the advanced version of this in the future.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
But yeah, this was a blast. If you have any questions for Jake, Jake is you're on Twitter mostly, right? Is that a good place to get in touch with you?
Yeah, at Jake Mor.
Jake Mor. Yeah, so much easier than saying my name. I'll drop both of our Twitter handles in the description if you want to ask us anything about subscriptions, about Superwall. I'm going to drop a link to Superwall also in the description so you can get started with that, and Appfigures as well, so you can get started with that if you aren't already. Other than that, that's all we have for you today. Thank you for joining us again.
Everybody.
This was a blast. enjoy the rest of your day or evening or night. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks to talk about screenshots. So that's going to be fun. Bye, everyone.